Mom? I'm sorry. I'm sorry for running away. Just, I'm lost and I'm scared. It's so dark here. I thought the city would be beautiful and shiny and free. But I miss you and Ellie and Dad, and I don't know where I am. Mom? Are you listening? Say something, please.
Hey, I'm Savvy Stonecrow, and this is my study. Go ahead and grab a nice cold drink, find a cozy seat, and listen to my long tale. Today we're going to talk about Gerson Boom's inspirations for Lord of the Hammer, beyond the prophecy, and possibly use what we know about Lord of the Hammer to reconstruct, well, we'll get to that later. First, some acknowledgements. This video does utilize information from the Deltarune wiki and from Hushbugger's Deltarune text dump. We have 12 more tomorrows until Deltarune Chapter 5 releases, and I am so excited! Happy Pride Month, by the way. I am releasing this theory now because I am positive nothing in Chapter 5 will negate the central premise of this theory. However, this video does utilize the premise that the prophecy panels in the sanctuary do not represent the true prophecy, but rather are the copies of the Lord of the Hammer found throughout the church. Let's get into it. Gerson Boom, that old man, historian, theologian, and teacher, knew that his colleague, Toriel, was having a rough go of it with her youngest child. An adopted human, Chris Dreamer, seemingly refused to accept their humanness. Among the other wonderful traits that made them uniquely them, they wore a red horned headband, hid behind their brother Asriel, and would regularly ask why their fur wasn't white. They felt like the black sheep of the family. Occasionally, though, they would come out of their shell when playing with the Holiday Sisters. It turns out that they are quite mischievous and playful. Or, that's what Toriel shares, in Hometown's only school's staff break room. Before he was a teacher, Gerson was an acclaimed historian. And historians always know how to regale an audience with an inspiring story. So to help Toriel and Chris, Gerson wrote a fairy tale based on the prophecy, a prophecy in which a human works together with monsters to save the world. Chris loved it so much that Gerson decided to publish, and the rest is history, as they say. It becomes a breakout hit, a cultural icon. Everything is good in the world until December Holiday decides to run away. She had always told her sister that she'd take her away from everything, that they'd go see the city and everything would be fun. Carol goes after her, speeding off in her car. Everyone else goes after Carol. Who knows what she'll find? And what if December is a lost girl who doesn't want to be found? What if this breaks Carol forever? And what if she can't find her at all? Des Holiday was one of Gerson's students, a brave, cocky, rebellious youth with a fire in her eyes and hope in her heart. It's safe to say that Gerson could see a little bit of himself reflected in those burning eyes. Yes, he mourned her disappearance too, in his own way, at least. Teachers, though, we can't mourn for too long. We must be there to give our students hope, unless Chapter 2, the City of the Shining, was born. I initially started writing this script with the goal of proving that the prophecy as seen in the sanctuary panels is false. But the more and more I looked into it, the more and more I realized that not only is the prophecy as seen in the panels actually just the plot of the Lord of the Hammer, but also that the Lord of the Hammer is based on the events surrounding Des Holiday's disappearance.
Shoot. Well, that's fine. Hunting ain't no fun unless there's a chase involved.
Don't believe me? let's start by looking at the prophecy itself. We hear the prophecy 3 times throughout chapters 1 through 4 in varying forms of accuracy. Once from Rousey, once from Caddy with a Y, and once, of course, from the panels. In order to truly understand the prophecy and the story of the Lord of the Hammer, we must actively listen to each interpretation. For fun, we'll go from least accurate to most accurate. Oh my god. So the angel that's watching over all of us, it has this cool prophecy, foretold by time and space. And okay, so I'm kinda paraphrasing here, but there's these heroes and they're so cool. They have swords and stuff, and there's one with horns, and he's honestly so cute. I mean, there aren't any pictures, but IDK, why? I just imagine him as cute. OMG, pinch his cheeks and give him a pumpkin pie. Give him fat-free cat food coupon clippings. We have such a huge pile of those to get rid of OMJ. But what's amazing is how these heroes are oh my god. They're the thing is they could be any one of us, you know. So that's the thing, you gotta keep in mind, we could all be someone that might change the world, right? So we should all be niceies to each other, right? Just be nice to everyone. We're all family, no matter what kind of person or who they are. We believe weird crap, but we're totally welcoming. You don't know who's gonna grow up to be a hero, right? Even maybe I'm actually a hero too? Maybe I'm keeping a secret from you guys. Psych, it's totally not me. Or is it? Totally keeping you guessing, right? And yeah, okay, that's not the whole thing. Maybe bad things happen in the story too. What's it called? A calamity? But it's all cool. Because okay. Actually, I don't remember what happened. I always fell asleep during the reading, TBH. Lol. Oh my god, while I'm up here, can I give some shout-outs? Shout out to Mom and Dad. Hey, Mom and Dad. And shout out to my little sister who couldn't make it here today. IDK what she's doing? Communing with demons or something? Lol, yeah, she does that. Lol, so cute, am I right? She should come here and bask in some totally holy light sometime. Lap her tongue in the holy bowl of cat drinking water. Oh my god. What? That's not for drinking? OMJ, I kept drinking it because I was thirsty, lol. OMG. Huh? The reading's over? Aw, okay. While that is a absolutely awful retelling of the prophecy, it does tell us a few important things about the light world. If this does follow real-world religious practices of readings during a religious service, then the prophecy is just one of the stories in their canon. In a lot of real-world religions, there is a different story that gets told each week, or a story that gets told over a few weeks, and then another story gets told over a few weeks. 2. Caddy with a Y is a person who seems to actively believe in her religion, even if she doesn't actually do the readings or know the stories or theology too well. This shows us what the average layperson might know about the prophecy, which seems to be heroes, be nice to each other, disaster of some sort, and something else happens, maybe. 3. The prophecy, or stories inspired by it, apparently describe a hero who has horns and may or may not be extremely cute while using he/him pronouns. To be honest, I don't know if Caddy with an Y is fully literate beyond text speak, She clearly has not read the prophecy at all and is going off of an extremely flawed memory of other people doing the reading, which she always falls asleep to. She may, however, be exposed to other media inspired by the prophecy, such as Dragon Blazers and the Lord of the Hammer. If either of these ever depicted this hero, who is clearly not the girl with hope on her heart, nor the cage with human soul and parts, perhaps this is where she's getting that description from. 4. There is a moral code in this religion that if we treat others with kindness, maybe the world will be saved. 5. The word calamity is used in the prophecy, and this doesn't seem like the type of word that Caddy with a Y would typically use. I would expect Caddy with an I to use it maybe, but not Caddy with a Y. So that must be important. 6. Light is also treated as a symbol of holiness and possibly purity. Once upon a time, a legend was whispered among shadows. It was a legend of hope. It was a legend of dreams. It was a legend of light. It was a legend of dark. This is the legend of Deltarune. For millennia, light and dark have lived in balance, bringing peace to the world. But if this harmony were to shatter, a terrible calamity would occur. The sky will run black with terror, and the land will crack with fear. Then, her heart pounding, the earth will draw her final breath. Only then, shining with hope, 3 heroes appear at world's edge. A human, a monster, and a prince from the dark. Only they can seal the fountains and banish the angels' heaven. Only then will balance be restored, and the world saved from destruction. Today, the fountain of darkness, the geyser that gives this land form, stands tall at the center of the kingdom. But recently, another fountain has appeared on the horizon, and with it, the balance of light and dark begins to shift. In Chapter 4, it is revealed that this retelling is more of a summary than a direct quote. Rousey also notably obscures information that could help the heroes. To be honest, Rousey's summary actually sounds more like the summary on the back of a book than the contents of a true prophecy. Hey, I think you'd like my first video, The Scribe's Parchment, which goes into my theory that Rousey is actually one of the rough drafts for the Lord of the Hammer. However, the prophecy that Rousey tells us here does give us more information about the actual process of the roaring than either Caddy's reading or the Sanctuary panels, and I think that's notable. Even though Rousey never actually uses the word roaring, they do tell us how it happens and what will occur. Rousey also says that the legend, not the prophecy, the legend, is whispered among the shadows. Are the shadows possibly darkness? And this is relevant because the prophecy, which whispers among the shadows, the legend of this world, Deltarune, a world basked in purest light, beneath it grew eternal night, if fountains freed the roaring cries, and Titans shaped from darkened eyes. Jockington grows the beard. This panel is labeled Joke 1. The light and dark both burning dire, a countdown to the earth's expire. The pointy-headed will say toothpaste, and then boy. This panel is labeled Joke 2. But lo, on hopes and dreams they send 3 heroes at the world's end. The queen's chariot cannot be stopped. A conundrum's first 4 tones. A conundrum's last 4 tones. A conundrum's multitude tones. The night, which makes with blackened knife, shall duel the heroes strife by strife. But lo, on hopes and dreams they send 3 heroes at the world's end. The light and dark both burning dire, a countdown to the earth's expire. If fountains freed, the roaring cries, and titans shape from darkened eyes. The third hero, the prince, alone in deepest dark. The lord of screens, cleaved red by blade. The first hero, the cage, with human soul and parts. And last was the girl, at last was the girl. The second girl, the second hero, the girl with hope crossed on her heart. Roots, love finds its way to the girl. Gallery, the last prophecy, the story's end. To save the world, there is only one way. They'll hear the ring of heaven call. They'll see the tail of hell take crawl. Jockington grows the beard. Again, this panel is labeled Joke 1. The flower man trapped in asylum. The angel banished will finally meet with its desire, a world vast and purest light, beneath it through eternal night, the light and dark both burning dire, a countdown to the earth's expire. If fountains freed, the roaring cries, and titans shape from darkened eyes. The last prophecy, the story's end, and then, when all hope is lost for the tale, the final tragedy unveils. To save the worlds, there is only one way. Only then will the worlds be saved. Firstly, this prophecy, if it's supposed to be telling the story that we have seen so far in Deltarune's chapters 1 through 4, does not include anything of chapter 1, except for one joke panel, and arguably the appearance of the heroes. Further, and I'm not the first theorist to bring this up, there are several panels that are just incorrect, such as the Queen's chariot cannot be stopped. A few points of interest lie in the wording themselves. Firstly, the prophecy and the roaring are both treated as their own actors. The prophecy itself is whispering among the shadows. The roaring itself cries when fountains are freed, and titans are shaped out of its, the roaring's, eyes. Secondly, every instance that says worlds lacks an apostrophe. This indicates plurality. Both worlds are being affected, but also the heroes emerge from between worlds, the edge of both worlds, possibly the fountains themselves. Both Rousey and Caddy said the term calamity, but the panels refer to it as a tragedy. I did intentionally include the repeated panels, and there are some panels that are repeated in all three sanctuaries. I think most interestingly is that the joke panel, Jockington Grows the Beard, is repeated in both Sanctuary 1 and Sanctuary 3. Meanwhile, the ones about the world being vast and purest light, beneath it grew eternal life, the fountains freed, the roaring cries, titans shaped from darkened eyes, those are both in all three, as well as the light and dark burning dire, countdown to the earth's expire, and low in hopes and dreams they send, three heroes at the world's end. That being said, the passage about the heroes is only in the second prophecy, a world that is notably backwards and mixed up in and of itself. One retelling of the prophecy that we haven't covered, though, is the Lord of the Hammer itself, and that's partially because we don't have access to the text of the Lord of the Hammer, but we do have the old men's retelling during the Hammer of Justice fight. Did you ever hear that old tale? Yes, the old tale based upon the prophecy, Lord of the Hammer. Chapter 1, The March of the Dark King. The heroes defeat the king and stop the dragon. Chapter 2, The City of the Shining. The heroes do battle in chariots to save the queen. Chapter 3, The Isles of Northern Light. The heroes travel among islands and catch a glimpse of a lost land. Chapter 4, The Trials of the Holy Hammer. A great smith gives the heroes a terrible weapon. Chapter 5. The Field of Pink and Gold. The vast garden is charred in an inferno of jealousy. What happens next? Who knows? There was only one more chapter. After that, it all stopped. The next book, it never did get written. The story, well, it became so grand, so overwhelming, some say it swallowed up the author itself. I believe that Gerson wrote a story using elements of the prophecy, but he does not copy the prophecy itself, given that he, or Old Man, believe it's futile to follow the paths and let them blind you. Instead, he writes what he knows, and what he knows is a charming human kid, a princely fluffy boy, and two sisters who radiate hope. Ezreal Dreamer was one of Gerson's students, as we know that Gerson only died a few years ago and seems to have previously taught the upper grades, those currently being taught by Alphys. Ezreal Dreamer is also the son of Gerson's only co-worker, or potentially only. We aren't actually shown much of the schoolhouse. Like, does it even have an admin team? I've taught at schools that don't have principals, but never schools without an admin team. But this really does seem like a 2 or 3 room schoolhouse being directed by its 2 or 3 teachers. But regardless, there is proof that Gerson used Azrael as inspiration for the Prince of the Dark. Of course, in Undertale, Azrael was the Prince of the Underground, but also Caddy, who introduces herself as Aunt Caddy, has previously had a romantic affiliation with Azrael, and then spends a good portion of her reading talking about a really cute hero with he/him pronouns and horns. The prophecy itself, and presumably any holy books, do not contain images as stated by Caddy with a Y, by her own admission. However, there are games, potentially movies, potentially illustrations based on the Lord of the Hammer, and she may, by cultural osmosis, be correctly associating the Prince of the Dark with Azrael. Azrael is also an overachiever, may have been the town good boy and rule follower, and is generally well liked, traits that we see Rousey aspire to. The Queen's chariot has been a point of debate, considering that we do see Queen's car stopped twice, once for traffic and once to explode. Nor do the heroes battle in chariots to save the Queen. If we ask ourselves which Lightners Queen maps onto, though, most people might answer that she has similar characteristics to Carol Holiday, the strict, cold mayor of Hometown. And people have been saying this since before we even saw Carol, all the way back in Chapter 2. In a few pieces of dialogue regarding Dragon Blazers, a game that is based on Lord of the Hammer, we learn that in Dragon Blazers 2, and that number is significant, the protagonist's sister gets cursed. That's why I believe that Des goes missing, runs away, gets lost in the code, or even dies between the time that Chapter 1 of Lord of the Hammer is published and Chapter 2 is written. Such an event would cause Carol, who is dedicated, if a little obsessive, to go looking for her beloved child. Otherwise, why would she be unstoppable? Why would she need to be saved? Who is she being saved from? Herself? We also learn about the Flower Man's Asylum, which could be a reference to Asgore's firing, divorce, and subsequent employment under Carol. Asylum has many meanings, among which are paradise, place of safety or refuge, and of course, a mental health institution. Gerson may have overheard Toriel complaining about her husband, soon-to-be ex, and his involvement with the case of December's disappearance. Gerson may have been entirely aware of his delusions around their happy marriage. Asgore's actions then, of course, burned down the fields of pink and gold. Floral fields are often a literary symbol of family, fertility, and marriage. Gerson likely didn't approve of Asgore's ignorance hurting his friend or colleague, and wrote it into his story. It seems that Asgore has been in a dark world previously, or he wouldn't have a black shard. And after such an adventure, who would believe him? Of course, Chapter 5 could be his paradise, because a more public dark world means everyone has to believe him. But also, the Flower Man's asylum could reference his suffering under the delusion of safety and normalcy with Carol's protection and financial support. Toriel does mention that she doesn't approve of Rudy's wife supporting Asgore's you-know-what. Asgore then, quite literally, is in asylum under Carol, but he's also completely under her control. Really, Gerson is just commenting on his own disdain for the most pathetic divorced man in the Toby Fox canon. It will be interesting to see what peeks we get into the lore of Lord of the Hammer in Chapter 5, and I feel that whatever we do learn will tell us a lot more about the events prior to the story than the events of Chapters 6 and 7. I know that this video is long and repetitive, and maybe it's just an excuse for me to show off a little voice acting, but I do genuinely feel that we are looking at a slightly recursive narrative here. A recursive narrative is one with circular structure. The story is repeated, it ends at the beginning. It doesn't have to be a perfect repetition. After all, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Recursive narratives often edit themselves and are turned inside out halfway through. If you give a mouse a cookie, it will want some milk. And then it will want another cookie. Some examples of recursive narratives are Groundhog Day, Neverending Story, and The Princess Bride. A few recursive stories that I like and can recommend are Frank Wildhorn's Wonderland, Hadestown, and Once on This Island. Both Hadestown and Once on This Island are stories being retold by the characters within them. They begin with Once Upon a Time and tell you that this is an old tale that you are being told again and again, with the hope that one day the tragic ending may be changed. At the end, they both say that this is why they tell the story, so that the next generation can learn it, and even change it. Famously, in one showing of Hadestown, Orpheus was finally allowed to save Eurydice and bring her home, because it was the actor's final night in the role. That was the one time that the story got to be changed. Conversely, Wonderland acknowledges the existing story by Lewis Carroll and takes its lead, Alice, through a fantastical adventure. Halfway through the musical, Alice is stopped by Lewis Carroll himself and told that every Alice must come to Wonderland, although she has come a little late, as she is now an adult. Her coming a little late does have repercussions for the story, as her reflection has suffered under the weight of all the stress and fear and worry that she has as an adult with adult responsibilities. And now this reflection, seeking revenge for an Alice that never came, is ready to do some real violent damage. Alice may have to lose things and people that are actually important to her if she wants to succeed. Why do I bring this up? Well, a certain turtle of a certain age does say that he hopes the next generation rewrites the prophecy as he did, and as many authors or storytellers before him had. I believe that Des and Asriel may have had their own Dark World adventures, may have faced their own calamities. They may not have. I believe that Gerson did witness the events that unfolded in Hometown and felt he could map it onto the prophecy of the Roaring, and I believe that it is happening again, and will continue to happen again and again unless we, the player, do something to retell it and change the ending. That's why there's multiple save slots. We experienced the story once, we remember it, and we'll tell it again and again. If you liked this video, thank you so much for joining me in my study today. Please be sure to leave a like and a comment. It really helps me out. I promise I will continue pushing out videos, and I plan on starting a new save file of Deltarune and playing through all of the chapters on stream until Chapter 5 comes out. If you like this video, I may have another video planned about Alphys's teaching practices. If I reach 500 subscribers, I will also be covering Asgore's Undertale battle theme, so be on the lookout for that. As always, stay fresher than a fresh and fragrant egg.